Well, welcome back, everyone, to the Black Doctors Talk podcast. I am your host, Dr. Christopher Holmes, and member of the Black Doctoral Network. Well, today I am here, never to disappoint, but I'm coming back with another amazing guest. And this time I'm bringing to the podcast Dr. Vernetta K. Mosley. As a writing coach, editor, and educational consultant, keyword educator, she's going to be my friend, right, guys? Dr. Mosley uses her expertise to instruct, mentor, and train graduate students and early level faculty. This young woman, Black don't crack, y'all. She's just not about talking the talk, but she is literally walking it out. I am so excited to share her beautiful spirit, her entrepreneurship, and this wonderful woman and professor with you guys. Please welcome Dr. Mosley.
Yay! Thank you so much, Dr. Holmes. I'm so excited to be here and just thankful and appreciative of any time I get the opportunity to talk about education and writing.
Listen, you're a passionate person. We've already talked a little bit already, so I know that you're going to be dropping a lot of wisdom, but I know it's going to be coming from a purposeful place, and so I'm excited for you to share. So we're going to start by just asking this first question.
Okay.
Where does this all begin for you?
Where does it all begin? That's a great question. I think for me, it probably begins in coming out of high school. I was naturally bright, so it's just expected that I was going to go to college. And so, but my family couldn't guide me. And so I applied to two schools in North Carolina. I was living overseas at the time, UNC Charlotte and UNC Chapel Hill. And I heard back from UNC Charlotte. So I was so excited. I got my acceptance letter. So I run into my guidance counselor's office. I said, I'm going to college. I got accepted to UNC Charlotte. And she was so just poised and patient. She said, well, Vernetta, that's wonderful. But why don't you wait to hear back from UNC Chapel Hill? Because that's a really good school. I'm like, okay. So had it not been for her and that bit of guidance, I would have been at UNC Charlotte, and there's no telling where my educational journey would have ended up. And so for me, that pointed to the importance of talking to the right people, of having the right people to guide you and direct you when you don't know, because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And it might have seemed something simple like research schools that you're applying to, but I didn't even know to do that. Mm-hmm. And so because of her guidance, obviously I waited, got my acceptance letter into UNC Chapel Hill, and did my undergraduate education there. And the experience that I had there, the relationships that I have until this day, just shaped who I am as a person, and even where I ended up. And so, and even the mentorship at the time, UNC Chapel Hill had an excellent minority advising program. So they brought us in during the summer. And so I was amongst other Blacks, other minorities. I had a minority advisor assigned to me for the first 2 years of my undergraduate experience, who checked in with me every other week.
Wow.
And so that caused me to be a minority advisor once I became an upperclassman and an RA. And so that was just such a positive experience for me that when I went to a PWI for my doctoral journey, I was shocked because I went on to go to a HBCU, NC State University. Go Aggies. I just met Aggies at the BDN conference. And yes. And so I just had been in such a great, rich, supportive communities, from UNC Chapel Hill to A&T. And then I started my doctoral journey.
Yeah.
And my experiences changed.
Yeah. All by yourself at that point. There is, unfortunately, we lose that sense of community. But you knew how it felt to be supported.
Absolutely.
So you were able to take all of those experiences with you into this new setting. So let me just ask this. You're living overseas. For those of you that don't know, she's a DC girl, okay? And she's living overseas. Why North Carolina?
That's a great question. So North Carolina, because my biological father is from North Carolina. So how I ended up overseas is my stepfather, who my mother married when I was 7. My biological parents were never married. He was in the Air Force. So we left DC, and my father is the only one out of his 9 siblings that left North Carolina. So he lived in DC all his life. And when I was younger in DC, he used to take me down to North Carolina. And so I recall, I wanted to just reconnect with his side of the family because I had been away since the age from 7 to 17. And so I knew I didn't want to go back to DC, Maryland. I had lived over in Washington State, didn't want to go back to Washington State. So I was like, well, why don't I go to North Carolina?
Amazing. Wow. That was for a young woman to say, you know what, I want to connect with my family. Absolutely. And also get a degree. I think that was a great plan, and it worked out in your favor.
It did. It did.
So, would you say that you've always been a natural communicator?
No, I will say in this way, I've always been a natural communicator when it comes to writing. I've always expressed myself very well in writing, but doing things like this, Dr. Holmes, people don't believe me, but I avoided taking an undergraduate public speaking class until I was in my PhD program. That's how petrified I was of communicating. And I was always a very shy, reserved person. So I was the bookworm. So I didn't communicate a lot to people, but I was always reading how I expressed myself. I would write letters to my mother. And so that was very natural for me, communicating and writing, but expressing myself to people, that was extremely uncomfortable, and it wasn't. So I really had to learn how to do that. And like I said, I take this undergraduate public speaking class in my doctorate program because now I'm teaching and I need the money. And it's scary to be in front of a room full of people having to talk. And so I'm like, okay, I have to overcome this fear. And so, of course, I take this class, and it is the only class I got a B in my entire doctoral experience. So I'm getting an A in my theory classes and doctoral level classes, and here I am getting a B, and the only graduate student in the class. And so I really only learned how to translate my written communication skills into oral communication by teaching, by preparing syllabi, and just being up in front of the classroom Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, week in and week out. And so that was how I evolved into communication. And I say that because people feel the same way that I did about oral communication when it comes to writing and written communication. And they feel like either I'm born a good writer or I'm not, because we all know gifted speakers. They're just very eloquent, and how they articulate or inflect or all those, how they connect with people or use body language, it seems to be very natural. And so they feel like it's the same with writing. Either I can write well and I'm born a good writer, or I can't. But just like that oral communication was a skill that I had to develop, so is written communication. Yeah. You may not like it as I like it, but guess what I still had to do, Dr. Holmes?
Yeah.
I still had to learn English language rules. Yeah. I still had to go get a bachelor's, master's, and PhD, the latter two in English, the first in journalism and mass communication. So even though I was gifted in it and it was a way that I actually expressed myself, it still was a skill that I had to learn. And so that's what I like to challenge people with when it comes to writing is it's a skill and you can learn it.
And I think one of the things that you said that lended itself to be helping you be a great writer is that you love to read.
Absolutely.
You were a reader.
Absolutely.
And oftentimes people that don't like to write or don't feel confident writing aren't avid readers.
Absolutely.
The other part of that is some people don't get the proper training.
Yes.
And that was me. I thought I was a fantastic writer in high school. I could have written the Constitution. That's how good I thought I was.
Right.
But I didn't realize I wasn't giving rigorous opportunities to engage in writing in a very liberating type of way. My writing was very structured. It was a 3-paragraph opening, closing, right? Yes. I got to college thinking, teacher said that we're going to write. I want you guys to write me a 5-page paper. 5-page paper. I got that. This is going to be a breeze. I'm going to go ahead and give you these 3 paragraphs and blow you away.
Correct.
Blew me away. Okay. I got that paper back. It was so bad, Dr. Mosley. It wasn't her feedback on the paper. She requested a meeting with me.
Really?
And I said, oh, there's no way this is going to be bad. She's going to be like, you are an amazing writer. I think you need to write for the school paper. That's how amazing you are.
Yes.
That was not what she said. The first thing she asked me was in the form of a question.
Mm.
She said, who taught you how to write?
Wow.
And I didn't quite know how to answer that question. And so I responded by saying, well, is there a problem with my writing? And she proceeded to tell me everything that was wrong with my writing.
Everything.
Everything. And it broke me.
Yes.
Because I came into undergraduate feeling really good about who I was as a student. I had never been told I was not good at anything.
Yes.
And that was the first person that humbled the now Dr. Holmes. And but I was so thankful for her because she explained to me what writing really looked like. And as you would say, it is a way to express yourself. And it doesn't have to be rigid. I just want to see if some thought flow through your paper. It has a beginning and it has an end, but it doesn't have 3 points in the middle.
Yes.
Right. And I didn't understand that. I just thought that's how everybody wrote. And so, but to be a better writer in that sense, I had to take a deeper introspective look into the way I read.
Absolutely.
Right? I wasn't reading for answers to a question. I was reading to look at the writer's perspective. Yes. What was the point of the text? And all that happened, you would have think that would have happened in high school. It did not. It happened in undergrad.
Yeah.
And then I became a better writer.
Absolutely.
Now, talking, I was like you. I was a very shy kid. Public speaking, I did take an undergrad, but it was required.
Okay.
I did not want to take it. The first time I spoke in front of those groups of students, I think I was actually twerking. That's how I felt. I felt like I was twerking at that podium because I was so scared. I was frightened. And yeah, I had done some Easter speeches, been there, done that, but it was nothing like talking in front of a group of strangers. That just terrified me. So I definitely hear you. So now at this point, let's go after the master's.
Okay.
Let's talk about the doctorate. Why? Yeah. What was the motivation? Why did you feel like the look on your face? Why the doctorate?
I'm sorry. Well, I have to back up to undergrad a little more to lead to the doctorate. So undergraduate, I never planned to get a doctorate.
Wow. Okay.
Never. My intention was to live my best life with the undergraduate degree. But I got into journalism. It was an English minor. Again, I come from a background where I needed practical skills. And so I've always liked writing, but what do you do with the English major? What kind of job do you get? And I was in English education. So I was an English minor. I actually started as a business major, but always disliked math. Switch majors, become a journalism major. Then I realized I don't like this style of writing. Like, it's so boring. What happened in the government today? What happened in sports today? What happened? Like, I covered Carolina sports, and that was a wonderful experience, but I didn't want to do that full time for a local newspaper. So I decided, since I was raised in the military partially, I'm going to join the Air Force. And when I figure out what I want to do with the rest of my life, guess what? The Air Force can fund the rest of this educational experience.
Yeah.
So didn't have a plan B, worked with the recruiter. He was excited. And my application was sent back towards the end of my senior year, graduating as an undergrad. And me and two friends and I had gotten together for the summer. They had their jobs lined up. One was moving to Virginia to start her career. Another one was moving to Charlotte to be in radio, broadcast radio. And I was going into the military as an officer. So I thought. So we worked these little jobs for the summer. And the recruiter says, you know what, I'm going to appeal this. This has to be a technicality because you're one of the strongest applicants I've had. Your ASVAB scores are great. You have over 3.3 GPA, you're physical. He comes back midsummer and says, you will not be joining the Air Force. I am devastated. I don't have a plan B. And my friends are moving off to start their careers. And guess what? I am working at the women's department in Dillard's with a BA degree from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill.
Wow.
So after doing that for 6 months, Dr. Holmes, I was highly motivated.
Yeah.
To go back to school. And I said, you know what? Because I was at Dillard's, despising going to work every day, I said, if I'm going back for what I want to do, what I enjoy doing. and that's English. I have to make this work.
Wow.
So I went back, got my master's in a year and a half, and I had, again, back to guidance. This professor takes me under her wings from my very first semester, and she says, Vernetta, if you're going to go, you need to go all the way. You have to go get a PhD. That's the only reason. And looking back, I only think of it as divine, godly. It was the will of God for my life. I still don't know why I did not get into the Air Force, other than that wasn't the plan of God for my life. I start this master's program, and this woman takes me under her wing. And that's why I decided. And I ended up going to the university that she earned her doctorate at, because she said, anywhere you go is going to be difficult. So at least if you go to Tampa, Florida, which I knew no one in Tampa, Florida, at least you'll be close to the beach. The weather, at least your quality of life will be good. Oh, and by the way, the gentleman that shaped my writing, he's there too, and he'll do the same for you.
Wow.
So that's how I ended up getting my doctorate.
Wow. On faith.
On faith.
It's amazing how, and I think I hear this a lot of times, how somebody planted a seed. Sometimes the seed of encouragement, and sometimes the seed of discouragement that pushes somebody in that direction. Mm-hmm. And in your case, like you said, you had never thought about it. But when you finished that master's and she saw the potential in you, mm-hmm. and she says, you need to go all the way to Tampa. I'll go all the way to Tampa and get down there and do what you really want to do. Mm-hmm. So talk about the journey. How difficult was it?
It was devastating. Wow. It was extremely difficult. I wanted to quit from the very first semester and nearly every semester thereafter. And I tell people the only reason I stayed was because I believed it was the will of God. That's the only reason that kept me in that program. And at times I would say, but God, I have a master's, God, I'm fine. And it's now only years later. I started that program in 1999 on a full fellowship. And that was the other divine thing. I applied to Emory too, two universities. My sister was in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And so I said, well, if I go to Atlanta, my sister's there, my older sister's there. And so I applied to Emory and the University of South Florida. Well, I didn't get accepted into Emory, so it made my decision easy. And then I'm walking by the chair's office one day, and he calls me in because he knew that I was planning to go to get my doctorate. He says, Vernetta, I don't know what you're considering, but this came across my desk from the University of South Florida. They're looking to recruit diverse students. He had no idea I had applied to the University of South Florida.
My goodness.
I was like, it can't get much clearer than this.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So I apply, I get the fellowship. So I go down to Florida on a full ride. Now I liken it to like the Joseph story. Like God tells Joseph, you're giving you this dream, you're going to be over your brothers, but he doesn't tell you you're going to end up in prison. This one's going to accuse you of rape falsely. You know what I mean? Like I didn't know any of the negative things associated with that plan, but everything aligned. And so that's how I ended up in Tampa, Florida. But in hindsight, everything that I went through gives me a sensitivity now in terms of what I do. It helps me to relate, because here's the thing, Dr. Holmes. Again, I was naturally bright. I finished Carolina in 4 years. I finished my master's in a year and a half. It took me 8 years to get the doctorate.
Oh my goodness.
Had I not been through that, fully enrolled, full tuition paying student the entire time. And I was trained in writing. So the things that I do to help people that are not trained in writing, which is through the dissertation and all these things, had I not had that experience, I would have so much arrogance. You talk about being humble. I would have so much arrogance and not have the empathy and the compassion to know what this experience can do to you, to your soul, to your spirit, to your mental health, to your relationships. Had I not been through a lot of those things that I've been through, I couldn't do what I did today, because I'd be thinking, what's wrong with them? I finished my PhD in 4 years. What's their problem?
Yeah.
But now I know all of the intricacies, all of the potential roads, blocks and obstacles and politics and petty games that are played behind the scene because I had 4 different chairs and experienced so many different obstacles. And I had to go to the dean of my college, the dean of the graduate school, all the way up to the president of the university. And so that experience really gave me a sensitivity. And I tell people, I finished my degree in 2007. So I'm more than 10 years removed. I will never allow myself to forget how it felt to be a graduate student who was questioning my very intellect, being told how smart, knowing I was smart all my life. I will never forget the tears, the heartache, the feelings of hopelessness, of desperation, of I just want to finish. I just want to graduate. I don't understand what's so difficult.
Yeah.
I will never, like, I've arrived and I did it by myself. And so that kind of what motivates me is if I can remove one barrier, which is the skill of writing, there already are enough other obstacles and barriers to this journey. Yeah. So if writing can be the least of your concern, if you can have the confidence to know that I can do this type of writing, because academic writing is a very specific type of writing. So you may be a great business writer, a great creative writer, but when it comes to this beast or this genre of academic writing, it is different, and you need the training, you need the skills. And so you talked about that 5-paragraph essay model that most of us who are educated in the U.S. come out of high school mastering, our intro paragraph, 3 bodies. You know, I used to teach Comp 1 and Comp 2 at the undergraduate level. So I had those students that would come in like, but I've gotten all A's in my high school program. Baby, this is college, not high school. So that was a great foundation. Now we're going to build upon that foundation and elevate your writing, because you're going to have a college degree. So you shouldn't be writing at the same level as someone with a high school diploma.
That's correct.
So we do that at the undergraduate level, but then people start a master's and or PhD program or any type of doctoral program. And guess what we don't do? We don't acclimate them to, again, the expectation. Everything has increased. The expectations, the requirements. You mastered the research paper in undergrad. Guess what? You have all types of writings to potentially do now. The lit review, lab reports, the seminar paper, a conference proposal, a grant proposal, a research proposal, a full-blown thesis and dissertation, all these other styles of writing. But we don't do any type of training, acclimation, introduction to, hey, this is what we expect of you at this level. Every university, every college, every department does it differently. You may have a writing class in your program, you may not. Thankfully, I had several, but one of my main ones was scholarly writing for publication. That was a course we had to take. So all of those, I don't even know how I got to where I am now, answering your question.
No, you're fine. I love it because it's taking me back. And I can speak for the educator side of this, right? Mm-hmm. So when I hear you talk about this is really registering with me because my undergrad is in science. So I'm a biology and chemistry major. Wow. So that's very technical, right? So when you said lab reports, yes, that resonated with me, but I am just collecting the findings and the data from my research, right? In my lab, and I'm putting it into a report. My master's degree is in post-secondary ed with a focus on adult learning.
Wow.
So that was a totally different type of writing. I had never written that way before, but it was very practical writing.
Yes.
My third degree, which is my EDS, is in educational leadership.
Yep.
Still very practical. This is more at work, engaging in practices, and then just reporting in a very narrative way. This terminal degree is a PhD. I had never written in this scholarly type of way, like very specific. I talk in a way that's very, I add words when I speak, right? So I was writing the way that I speak, adding in a couple of these when I didn't need to add, just adding it to make it sound great. They didn't want all that. What are you trying to say, Chris?
Absolutely.
That was the question. What are you really trying to say? And do you need 6 paragraphs to say what you can say in 2.
Correct.
And I'm thinking, well, in my mind, I do, sir. I think I really do. And he says, I'm telling you, you don't. And you can't.
Yeah.
Out of this program. And I didn't have a writing class. All this was happening in all of these theoretical classes, in these methodology classes, in these, there was nothing there. And I was learning as I went along. And so I could have benefited from you, Dr. Mosley. I needed you in my life about 6 years ago, because the first, as you would say, that first year,
floundering,
as they would say, it blew my wig back.
Correct.
I was like, huh? My hair did go back then. As you can see, since I finished, my hair goes forward. But back then it was back. But I was struggling. I was struggling with the writing, and I was struggling with the academic reading as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so here I am trying to bridge these two together. And I'm like a fish out of water. Like, okay, I need to just take a moment and process all of this, because this is very uncomfortable and unfamiliar to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I can hear what you're saying, and I can see all my other classmates as the professors going through the text. We're just looking at each other like, what in the world is she? I could not access it in the way that she was giving it to us.
Absolutely. And here's the problem with graduate education, because in the work that I do, everybody agrees there's a problem when it comes to writing at the graduate level, from deans and administrators to faculty members to students. Nobody agrees on who's responsible for fixing the problem. So this is where I often find myself situated. From the faculty administrators, these students can't write. Faculty, why did they admit these students? These students can't write, right? Mm-hmm. And from the students, they tell me I can't write, but they don't tell me how to fix it. Yeah. So what problem do you have? You have the problem of faculty trained in education, biology, engineering, anthropology, whatever their discipline is. They didn't sign up to teach to write.
Yeah.
And so whatever they picked up along the way, they can identify what they're looking for, but they can't tell you how to get there.
Yeah.
Because they're not trained to teach. They don't have pedagogical skills when it comes to writing. So the students are like, I don't know how to fix it. So often we turn to writing centers. Unfortunately, most writing centers are undergraduate focused. So then a graduate student visits the writing center, and they're like, well, I don't know if I want another graduate. Often staffed by graduate students. I don't know if I want another graduate student helping me. I need someone who has the degree. So in my naivety, I'm thinking, I have the perfect solution to this. I'm going to develop a graduate writing curriculum. And just universities are going to buy it, and it's going to solve their problem. And then I realized, you know what? Curricula is set. They have their accreditation. And if they didn't factor in writing into it, oh, well, they're not going to, because they're not going through a reaccreditation process, and they don't have space and room in their programs to infuse writing. So we're just or fund it. And who's going to teach it?
That's it.
So it often lands in the graduate school. So that's when I had to become more creative and resourceful. And how do I still meet this need? Because it baffles me how everyone in academia knows it's a problem and it's a need. But it's like the mentality often is, well, we figured it out. And if they can't figure it out, they don't deserve to belong.
Yes, yes.
That's not what we do are supposed to do in education.
Yep.
You're training them in methodology. You're training them in theory. You're training them in scholarship. Why aren't you training them in writing?
Absolutely.
So that's when thankfully I recovered my passion for writing, because I really, that my 8-year journey, I didn't even want to write again, Dr. Holmes. I was like, anything to do in academia, I just want a job. When I go to the job, when I leave that job, when I clock out at 5, I don't have to think about that job till when I clock back in. I want a life. I'm ready to live my best life.
Yeah.
But I knew, again, back to that purpose, I knew I had been through all of those things. I knew I had this gift of writing, this gift of teaching, and I got connected with someone in education. Because again, another disservice we do in higher education, we just put graduate students in front of the classroom to teach their subjects with no instructional training.
at all.
at all. So thankfully, I edited a grant for a faculty member in education. She gets the grant and then hires me. So all of my experiences come out of the College of Education, where I learned about pedagogy, learning styles. What? How can they don't teach this stuff? They just put me in a classroom to teach writing, and I don't know any of this information.
Yeah.
And so it became, so that's why I say all the experiences really were designed to get me to where I am today, so that I can teach writing. And of course, I taught writing at the university level. I taught Comp 1, Comp 2, expository writing, African American lit. And so my ultimate solution was, you know what, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a book that can be used in any broad-based research or writing-based course, that I will focus on faculty members because I know they're frustrated. So if they have a resource that they can direct students to, a resource that they can say, hey, I don't necessarily know how to tell you to do this, but this guide is part of our course and it will give you the skills that you need. So was kind of my workaround to this curriculum. And then in the meantime, I've still been able to build my own curriculum. So I have 24 sessions, what I call workshops, and they're designed for early stage, mid stage, and late stage graduate students. And it's the writing skills and complementary academic skills, like the reading. I talk about critical reading, like how should you be reading at the graduate levels? Like you said, it's not just about comprehension, it's about how do we write in our discipline? Because there's general writing rules and then there's disciplinary specific writing rules. How do we investigate research? How do we pose questions? How do we write our results? How do we explore the scholarship? How do we do all these things in my discipline? And the reading is how you absorb it.
Yes.
Because when you have a very well-written article, guess what? You should figure out why was this so clear? How do they organize and structure their points?
Yes.
And then likewise, we've all had the experience of reading an article or a source, and we're like reading it over, like, what in the world? Yes. I know I'm edgy. That's not good writing. People think good writing at the academic level is I use all of my jargon and all of my highest level vocabulary. No, good writing is accessible and it's understood by your audience. So don't mimic a style that is inaccessible. So these are the things that we need to do a better job of teaching in graduate school.
You just said a whole lot when you just said the part about the reading, that when you read things that you don't understand, but people will say, well, that's academic writing. That's what it's supposed to feel like. You should be struggling through it. But
no, sir.
I'm struggling through it and I have yet to access the article's point. So now I feel like I've wasted 2 hours to read 2 pages. And I can't even go to class and have a talking point because I don't know what the author said. That's ridiculous. And so I definitely think what you're doing is going to make a difference, but we just got to get more people on the Mosley train. We got to get them to understand, because what you're doing now with Cultivate the Writer, that's great work. And I think other graduate students need to do about it, because as we are transitioning to get on that train, we got to get students ready to do the work they need to do so they can graduate and be successful academics themselves. So as you think about Cultivate the Writer and that work, what do you want that legacy to be?
You know, that legacy for me is about, again, people understanding that it is an academic skill and they have the confidence, the tools, the strategies, the information, they have developed the skill. So they don't feel like that's something that's not for me. Because I tell people all the time, guess what you did when you signed up for grad school? You signed up to write, regardless of what your degree is, because you signed up to be a scholar.
Yeah.
And what does a scholar do? A scholar conducts research in order to what? Disseminate research.
Yeah.
How do you disseminate your research? You write about it or you present on it. So back to those 2 communication skills, you cannot get away from effective communication skills as a scholar unless you don't plan to share your research, but it's designed for you to share your research. So the more you can identify as being a writer, that's part of my job as a scholar, is to develop this skill, just like it's part of my job to develop my oral communication skills. I need to talk about my research concisely and effectively. I need to be clear about it. And so for me, the legacy is about giving them that skill that they may get somewhere along the way in their graduate school, but it's probably not guaranteed that they will. And that's why it bleeds over into early level faculty who are now under the pressure of producing for their jobs.
Yeah.
And so that's the legacy for me. And that's why I call it Cultivate the Writer, because this is what I say. There's a writer in each and every single one of us. That writer is there. All I'm here to do is to do what other people with expertise do. You don't have to go get a doctorate in English. I'm going to take what I know and make it accessible for you. So it doesn't take you 8 years, 5 years, however many years to master this skill.
Yeah.
So that's what it's about. And the other thing, I didn't bring where's my little, so the other thing, the reason I wrote my book, so this is the title of my book, because to me, it's about the mentality. But because when I started doing these workshops, but I'm not a writer, No, I'm an editor. And what am I doing? I'm getting you to understand if you don't embrace this identity now, your journey will be so much more difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
So here's the foundational tools that you need to start developing and cultivating that writer. And if you flock to all the professional development opportunities that your department offers, that your graduate school offers, that the BDN network, writing productivity sessions. Why? Because everyone knows how vital writing is to your success. Take advantage of these opportunities and get community, get support, because people think they're the only ones struggling. No, I work with people at HBCUs, PWIs, HSIs, large research universities, small liberal arts institutions. Everyone struggles with the same. International students, native-born students. It does not matter, Dr. Holmes. It is a problem in higher education. And the reason I love the work that I do is because I get to make people understand that they can do this.
Yeah.
And then secondly, I get to work with people committed. If I was in one institution, if that institution was committed to this, maybe, but now I get to work with deans and administrators who bring me in and say, yes, we want to give our graduate students writing workshops. We want to give them we want you to come and host a thesis and dissertation boot camp every single semester because we understand that our students are not getting this. Yes. Or we want our faculty to know about you so that when they know their students need a coach or an editor, they have a resource. And then the other value that in the work you kind of explore and learn more, I'm finding out there's not many people, not many editors that understand our research. So from so many faculty, and this comes from faculty mostly, you're the first person when you edit my research, you just get it. You're not trying to change it.
Yes.
And I didn't even think about that as a need in the profession where we have faculty members doing research on populations and about topics that other editors, they just don't get it and they don't understand. So they don't even know how to give the quality feedback and the guidance that is needed.
Raising my hand, I've been through that. I had an editor that I had to explain my research before she was even ready to read it. Because she told me, she said, I'm not quite sure what I'm reading. So talk me through what it is that you're doing and some of the terminology. And once we got past that hurdle, then we were good to go. But that was a 3-week process by itself.
Absolutely.
Because I was dealing with issues related to race and poverty. And those were 2 areas that she could not connect to.
Yep.
So, I mean, this is just some very profound things that you're sharing, which I think those who are on the journey, those who maybe are in graduate programs or undergrad, that are thinking to go down this journey, these are things they need to be aware of. And these are definitely things that I was not aware of when I started. I just knew I wanted to get my doctorate.
Right. Exactly.
I had no clue the amount of hurdles that I had not stretched for that
right.
I wanted to jump over.
Absolutely.
Oh, man. What's one thing you wish you would have known earlier in your career?
Just one?
Just one.
One thing I wish I would have known. I think I wish I would have known about the politics. That
Yeah.
probably was the most how political getting this degree is.
Oh my God.
I never pledged. We were, and I always say, my husband pledged, and I always say it's academic hazing, and you don't. This system wasn't designed for people of color. It wasn't.
Yeah.
And so when you just think I'm a tuition paying student, I've gotten this degree, I've gotten that degree, you don't understand what that level represents. And had I understood fully, like you said, I just wanted to get a degree. I
Yeah.
didn't understand what getting a doctorate meant.
Neither did I.
And had I understood that, I think I would have reached out to people much sooner or tried to connect with community much sooner.
Yeah. For me, I knew, and I still communicate this all the time. I was okay with the responsibility of holding the title of doctor.
Mm-hmm.
But as you said, I was not equipped with the tool to navigate the politics because I'm not a politician and I don't play politics.
Correct.
At all. And so I had to learn very quickly, though,
Mm-hmm.
if I wanted to carry that mantle, that I was going to have to learn to play the game.
Mm-hmm. And from people within it, because it's a different type of politics. And so
yes.
You can't talk to someone in politics or in business because you take those strategies into academia. Thankfully, the military was comparable because of the hierarchy of the military.
Yes.
I was familiar with that. But even in the military, it's not even about class. I mean, it's not about race, it's about class. So either you were enlisted, the kid of someone enlisted or officer's kid.
Yeah.
But growing up, once I got into the military, I was around white, Hispanic, all types of people.
Mm-hmm.
So it was such it's you have to have people who are within the system, and particularly within the system within your department or college or university, because the politics can vastly differ from department to department or college to college. And so without having an inside advocate at times who can help speak the truth and tell you things, and that's you're in consulting. That's the other reason I love what I do. I don't fear any politics. I mean, if you all decide not to bring me back next year, that's fine, but I'm going to tell these students the truth.
Yeah.
Because they deserve to know.
Yeah. And and the other thing that we didn't talk about, and we can do it very briefly, is that writing is very personal. And so when you get to the level of the doctorate and you're writing, you're so connected to this work, to your writing, and people are telling you that what you're doing isn't good enough, it's not scholarly, or they don't support it.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about this idea of imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
You want the degree, but in order to finish it, you have to basically walk in a lane of being somebody different. And this work that you start reading, it doesn't even look like your work anymore. You don't know whose work it is because it's not what you wanted to do. But because of the politics, you got pulled away from being authentically yourself and doing what the powers that be said you needed to do to get the degree.
Mm-hmm.
And then what do you do with a document that you don't believe in?
Exactly.
This can't be your life's work.
Exactly.
This is not even your work.
And how counterproductive it is, because this degree is designed to set you up to be an expert. So this is supposed to be your first entree into academia, where I'm identifying my name with this topic.
Yes.
And you're supposed to build upon that as you go out into the workforce. But if you don't even believe in it, why?
Yeah, it's wild. And so I think this is a real conversation that so many people need to listen to and to watch. And so for those of you that are out there, you need to share this with some of your friends that are in graduate programs. I think this would be life-changing for them. And I think it may share some gems that they didn't think about, or it's going to help them for when they encounter some of these barriers or hurdles, they're prepared to now have the tool to navigate it better than they would have not being informed. And you can thank Dr. Mosley for that. This was all free. Okay, so you can thank her, you can send her an email, you can send her a LinkedIn message, but this has really been eye-opening for me. You've taken me back down memory lane. I almost feel like I need to go upstairs and what is it, Friday? It's a happy hour somewhere. Oh my goodness. Very powerful. I'm excited about your work.
Thank you.
I really am. You are in a lane all by yourself. And to think that you are helping people that look like you and I,
Mm-hmm.
that's the beauty of it all.
Absolutely. I'm going to tell you this one story. And this is what hurts me. I have this young woman that I'm working with. She happens to be a Black woman. She was working on her dissertation proposal for 3 semesters, Dr. Holmes. 3 semesters. She's at a PWI. She goes to her program director, her faculty member. I think it was either her faculty member or program director, and says, you know what? This isn't worth it. I'm dropping out.
Wow.
And you know what happens? She slips her my card and says, contact this woman. She can help you, but don't really tell anybody. Tell that, she signed up for coaching sessions. She got her proposal accepted in 11 days.
Wow.
11 days.
So
I think about this. You watch this woman struggle
3
for 3
semesters.
semesters. 3 semesters. You had a resource for her the entire time. I don't know who this person, I don't even know how this person got my call. I don't know. She comes to you to tell you that she's dropping out of the program. And that's when you decide to give her a resource. What is your motivation at this point? Your enrollment numbers, your retention numbers?
Yeah. Because if she dropped out, now that would make them look bad, right?
And this woman, I worked with her 3 coaching sessions, and in 11 days, you approve her proposal.
Wow.
Those are the things that make me indignant.
Wow.
And this is why I have to do what I have to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is why I went through everything I went through, as horrific as it was. So that shouldn't be. We both know that shouldn't be.
Wow. But it has empowered you. It really has. Like, you have a fire under you now that you wouldn't have had if those 8 years had not occurred.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So they thought what they were doing was something, but they have no idea what they released into the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm so excited that they did. Thank you for trying, but you failed. You failed. So, I mean, you're doing great work now. What's next? What do you want to be doing moving forward?
I think moving forward, the goal, like any entrepreneur, is to scale. It is to, this work is so personal. It's like your baby, but I know I can't keep it. And so I look at this as I have an obligation to scale, to get, just like the book. I see how much the book can do. I can only do a certain number of workshops, but this book, anybody can get it. Any faculty member can adopt it in their course. Any student can go get it, and it's going to help them. And so that's what's next for me. Is how do I scale everything that I do so it can get to the masses?
Yeah. Wow. I'm excited. I'm excited. It's individuals like you that we really love to have as a member of BDN. Just doing great work, so smart, so responsible, so committed, so passionate. You've got this vigor about what you're doing. Talk a little bit about your experience so far with the Black Doctoral Network.
I remember my first conference, it was years ago, and it was a community that I was missing. It was that community of people who just understand. I recently did a session on emotional intelligence for graduate students at the most recent BDN conference. And you should have seen some of the eyes in the room, like there's somebody else that's been through that. And so it is, number one, given me the community and the support that I need, even as an academic entrepreneur, because I'm not in a traditional space, getting tenure and still within the institution. So that's isolating. And so the community of entrepreneurs that I connect with that have advanced the highest level of degrees in their disciplines, that I can still have academic conversations with, that our research is aligned, our interests are aligned. At the end of the day, my area is African American literature, and I don't make any apologies about that.
Yeah.
And then it's also helped me to scale. Every conference that I've attended, I've gotten connected with a different university. I went to the first conference that was out in the regional conference in California.
Yeah.
I get connected with LMU, and they bring me in to do workshops for the graduate students. I think I presented online even during COVID. I got connected with the faculty administrator at Tennessee State University and did some sessions for them. And so it's helping. It's not only connecting me to community, but it's also giving me a platform to help the people that I want to help.
Yeah.
And there is nothing more rewarding as an author, as a presenter, than people get what you intended for them to get. So when people read the book and they come back and say, this book did A, B, C, D, E, that's exactly what I designed for that book to do for you.
Yeah.
So that is rewarding. When people say, there are sometimes people say, I just get peace sitting in your workshops. I just get confidence. I know I can do it. I don't feel crazy or alone. That's what I am intending for you to get from that. I feel more confident. Now I know I can do this. That is exactly what I want you to get when you come in contact with Cultivate the Writer. I want you to be motivated. I want you to feel equipped. I want you to feel like I can do this because you can.
Yeah.
You can.
I love it. I just hear you saying at the end of those sessions, pick up your pen and write.
Mm-hmm.
The Bible said God told that man to pick up your mat and walk. Well, you're saying the same thing. Your command, it's already inside of you. You just got to believe it and then do it.
Correct.
Awesome. Dr. Mosley. Oh my God, I can't hold you all day. I want to thank you so much for joining me today on the Black Doctor Talk podcast. It has truly been a pleasure, guys. I hope you guys have really enjoyed this. If you would not mind, tell our viewers and listeners where they can go to learn more about you and the work that you're doing.
Sure. You can go to our website, www.cultivatethewriter.com, because you are a writer. So be committed to cultivating the writer in you. We're on social media. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Cultivate Writer. You can connect with me, I go by Dr. V, Dr. Mosley, Dr. V. I'm on all of those platforms as well. Or you can email me at drv@cultivatethewriter.com. Or if you're interested in workshops or other types of services, info@cultivatethewriter.com.
Well, guys, stop what you're doing right now. Get over there. Follow Dr. Mosley. Connect with her with Cultivate the Writer. She is doing some work that many of you all need to connect with and get her services, right? I am putting the stamp of approval on her right here, okay? So while you're going over there, you're following Dr. Mosley, you're connected with her. Also connect with the Black Doctoral Network as well. We would love to share with you and have you be a part of our organization and a part of our family. But until then, guys, this has been a phenomenal time with Dr. Mosley. Again, Dr. Mosley, I thank you for joining me. I will be back again with another amazing guest. But until then, like I always tell you, go and share the good news about the Black Doctoral Network with somebody. Be safe, be blessed, and I'll see you guys soon.